All right, everyone, we're going to start our first little mini ceramic project. This is not our final project. It's going to be just a little mini assessment project to get us used to using clay and all of our tools. There's a lot involved in ceramics, so let's learn about our first vocabulary word, which is pinch pot. Pinch pot is like a small little bowl. It's called pinch pot because you're going to be pinching it with your fingers to mold it. So what you're going to start with first is your canvas placemat. This is different from our regular placemats. This is made of fabric. What it's going to do is help protect our tables, but it's also going to make sure your clay doesn't stick to your table because the clay is very sticky. So place this down in front of you. We're going to use some of these tools a little bit later. But what you do also need at your table is a water dish with a little bit of water and then a small sponge. Not a big sponge, but a small one on the other side. So once you get your clay, you're just going to get a tiny little piece of clay. What you're going to do is kind of mold it in your hands to make kind of like a sphere. So you can mold it like this. You can mold it on your canvas. It's up to you. Just make sure it's looking even, not perfect, but just sort of like a sphere. Okay, so now once I have that, the first part of the pinch pot, I actually have to stick my thumb in and make a hole. So I'm going to push, 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 not all the way to the bottom, just like that, so I have a little hole here. And what I'm going to do next is use my fingers and my thumbs. My thumbs go on the inside, my fingers go on the outside. And I'm going to start pinching and twisting in a circle. So I can leave this on my mat because what I'm going to do is just sort of pinch around it as it's laying here. And the more I pinch it, the more it starts to look like an open bowl like this. You can see it's not open enough so far. It's a little bit thick here. So I'm going to keep pinching, 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 keeping my thumbs inside and my fingers on the outside until I think I've got it the right width on the outside of the bowl. Now this is really simple. If I think I like this, then what I can do is just start to smooth it out. If I want to keep going, I can keep pinching it and getting it a little bit deeper and wider. I don't want to pinch too much though, because if these sides get too thin, it'll start to sort of flop over. The clay is not super hard. It's a little bit kind of wet and floppy still. The more I let it kind of dry out in the air, the more it'll get a little bit harder to work with. So keep molding, molding, molding. And I think that looks pretty good to me. Now, as you can see, my fingers have made a lot of indents in here. So what I'm going to do now is just try and start to smooth this out. I have my water dish here. I'm going to use my sponge. Just dip a little bit. It does not have to be soaking wet. And what I'm going to do is just sort of use my sponge to smooth out the sides. Now, I don't want to dunk my pinch pot in the water because the more water I add to this, the sort of like stickier and looser this clay will get. So I just want to put a little bit and then use my fingers to smooth this out. I can smooth the inside out. I can make sure the top is even. And then I'm going to smooth the outside out. So just put a little bit of water, not too much. I can smooth this with my fingers and put some pressure on it so it starts to get more even all the way around the sides. So this is basic idea of how to make a pinch pot. You can kind of jazz it up and add different things to it if you like. And in fact, one thing I am going to add to this is a shape. So once I've kind of smoothed this out, I'm going to get a little bit of extra clay. And you guys can ask me for this clay if you need some more. And I think I'm going to add a shape on the side of it. I think I'm just going to add a little heart on the side. So if I'm adding something to my pinch pot or anything I make with ceramics, what I need to do is I need to add something called slip and score. So I'm just going to press this down and I'm going to cut out my heart using some of my tools. So I can use this little tool or I can use one of the little plastic knife tools to cut out my shape. Once I have my shape all the way cut out, I don't need these scraps. I can put these back in the ceramic pile, the clay pile. So this is the shape I want to attach here, but with clay, I can't just attach it like that because in the kiln when we fire this, it will fall off. So what I have to do is something called slip and score. I have to actually take my poker tool and I have to make some indents here. What I'm doing is I'm putting some little air pockets in here so that the heart will stick to this. I also have to do the same thing on the back of the heart. Whenever you attach one piece of clay to another piece, you have to score it. That's what I'm doing here. I'm making some indents. Then I have to put some slip. Now, slip is basically just clay mixed with water. So I will have a cup of slip at your table. If you ever don't have slip, you can make slip by putting clay in your water and just letting it sit for a minute and mixing it up. This is just like really wet, goopy clay. So I'm going to take some of this slip and just dab it into the cracks that I made. Now, once I've done that, I can take my piece, I can press it down carefully. I can smooth it out a bit. I can smooth the edges out. And now this piece is much better attached to the sides of my clay bowl. It's really important that I kind of smooth the edges out and just put some pressure so they really stick together. There are tools that will help you with this kind of smoothing. If you want to use some of these flat edge tools, if you want to use the knife tool, if you want to use your poker tool, you just sort of get this a little bit more smooth. That's up to you. Okay, so I think I'm about done with this. Everything looks great. It's ready to go in the kiln. The last thing I just have to do is I have to carve my initials on the bottom. So I'm gonna carve my first and last initials, or I can do first, middle, last, whatever I want. And then I'm done. So I can put this aside. I'm going to put a little piece of paper under it with my name, and I'm gonna put it next to the drying rack. So that's my pinch pot. Next, we'll learn about how to make the little coaster.